What's up guys, my name is Jacob Johnston, and in this video I'm going to be going over my mix breakdown, how exactly I mixed and mastered my Rooftops cover. I've seen a lot of traction on these video game type of covers, so I thought I would show you how I actually went through the production process. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Alright, so here I am in my session. I'm just going to give you a quick run through of the tracks that are actually in this mix so you have a better idea. So the drums is just a MIDI drum kit, and I added some extra kick triggers to there to the kick and the snare to make the kick and the snare sound a little bit more fat and full. Then we got the room tracks right here, and I used a MIDI bass for the bass, and then I used a right and left guitar. Here's what the drums sound like soloed. And then here is the guitar tone that I chose. And then I also have like a lo-fi guitar going on right here. Let me see if I can see where the waveforms are. There we go. That's that little underlining tone. And then I got a lead guitar here for the chorus. And then for the backing track of the original song, I kind of just split it up into a few different versions so I could have them in different volumes and different kind of like mix them in a certain different ways. I didn't want it just the backing track the whole way. I wanted to have certain sections in certain places. So here's what the backing track sounds like. And here. And then I also added just a few effects right here, just some impacts. Got one right here too. All right, and then this is what the mix sounds like in all, basically. And if you want to listen to the full song, it's on my YouTube channel. So let's get into how I actually mix this to sound like that. So the first thing I do is I have a templated session. So everything is already routed and everything for me, so I don't have to start from scratch every single time. If you want access to my Reaper templates, go down in the description below. They're completely free, and you can download a session that looks like this. So you're ready to start mixing and mastering and writing. So go ahead and claim that in the description below. But this is my more advanced template. I have 3 different mix buses. So basically I'm grouping different instrument tracks into 3 different buses so I can process them individually. And I always do top-down mixing. So basically what that means is I sculpt the whole sound from the top down. So I'm going to look at the big picture of the song and be like, okay, this is like how I want the compression to move. This is how I want the EQ to sound and everything like that. And then I'm going to move into individual tracks. So I'll give you a quick rundown of basically what I did on the mix buses. So mix in is receiving my drum kit and my rhythm guitars. So on here, I added some bus compression. And I also added a little bit of saturation to make the guitars and the drums sound more full. That's basically all I did. Remember, that's just grouping together the drum kit and the rhythm guitars, and that's it. Then we go on to mix out. This bus is receiving my drum ambient, which is like my room and everything. My bass guitar and my rhythm ambient or my quad tracks. For this, I'm not using quad tracks. It's just like automatically templated if I have quads. But on this, I am using a multi-band compressor on the low end to kind of duck out the low end buildup that this song has. Just to kind of even out the low end to make sure it's not too pumpy or puffy sounding. And then I'm using a little bit of bus compression to kind of close that in a little bit. All right, let's go on to the chorus so you have a different sound. Now we go into mix sum. So mix sum is a bus that basically gathers all the tracks except for effects and vocals. There's no vocals on this song, except for effects and samples. So basically mix sum is mixing the entire band. So on mix sum, I'm receiving mix in and out, which is basically all the band instruments. So this is what I did for mix sum. And I'll just delete these others that I'm not using so you can kind of get a better understanding of, because mix sum is where you really hear a difference in the mix. So for mix sum, I always pull out the G channel SSL. And basically what I'm doing here is I'm finding the sweet spot of the EQ to pull out the best in the song. So I will go ahead and A/B this EQ. As you can hear, when it's on, the guitars are a lot more up front. Basically on the EQ, I'm just boosting the mids to give it that more full and lively sound. When it's off, it just sounds kind of dull. But when it's on, it sounds much more alive. Then we'll go to a different section of the song so you don't get bored. Then I use some bus compression to pull together the band and glue it a little bit. Because the reason why I do bus compression on the mix sum as well is because once I push out those mids a little bit farther, they become a little bit too wide and I want to kind of squeeze them back in with some compression. So I use a bus compressor to do that. And then this is like the secret weapon to getting low end to sit tight in your mix. It's called max bass. And basically what this does is it pulls the all these sub frequencies below like 100 hertz, and it basically creates harmonics and pushes them up to the low mids of like 150, 250 hertz. And this is a really good plugin for making sure that low end shows up on no matter what device you're listening on. Like if you've ever listened to something on your phone and there's like no bass, it's probably because you aren't using max bass. If you use max bass, it's going to push up the bass frequencies into the lower mids so that you can hear what the bass would sound like if you were actually like listening in a car or nice headphones or something. So this is kind of what it sounds like. If you're listening on a phone, it's slightly noticeable. It's a very subtle change, but it does help the low end feel a little bit more tight. And then next, I just pulled up another EQ right here, and I just boosted a little bit of the higher mids and a little bit of air to give it a more airy type of sound. Cool. Now I will go on to the drums. So the drums, I don't think I really did anything if I go into these tracks. Basically, I just used drum triggers. So like if the kick was soloed like this, I'm adding triggers. Just makes the drum sound a little bit more fat. Same thing with the snare, I'm doing the same thing. And I don't really think I did any drum processing on this because the MIDI drum kit that I used for this was already very, very mix ready. So I don't want to overcook anything. So I basically just left the drum kit just how it was. I'm a big believer in if it's not broken, don't fix it. If there's nothing, if it sounds good, it sounds good. So I just left drums like it is. Now, if we go into bass, right here, I didn't do anything on the bass either. I'm starting to like remember what I did because I haven't looked at this mix in a while. I didn't do anything on the bass either because this is a MIDI bass and I already dialed in the tone tight enough to be able to be mix ready. And that's another important thing that I want to say is when you're in your demo writing stage, you want to dial in your tones to be super tight so they're ready to be mixed. And a good demo is something when you go to the mixing stage that you barely have to mix it because you dialed in the tones so tight. And again, with the drums and the bass, a lot of that sound that I'm getting is from the mixed buses anyways, so I don't really have to do much in the individual track stage when I'm mixing top down. Now on guitars, I rolled off a little bit of low end to make the bass and the kick be more prominent in the mix and kind of duck the guitars out of the way. And I also added some multi-band compression in the low mids because it was getting a little bit muddy in that lower mid range, going into kind of the subs. And again, I didn't really do much on the guitars either because I made sure that my guitars were ready to be mixed. So I was dialing in a tone in my writing stage that already sounds good in a mix. And then basically I don't have to do very much in the mixing stage. Yeah. So next is my guitar lo-fi. Let's see if I did anything here. Did nothing here because it was mixed ready already. Let's see if I did anything on my lead guitar. Okay, so on my lead guitar, I ducked out a little bit of the low end to make sure it doesn't clash with the bass or the kick or anything. And then I ducked out some high end because I want to make sure that the cymbals have room and they're not being overpowered by the lead guitar because, of course, lead guitars are going to be a little bit more scratchy because you're playing up higher on the neck using higher pitches. So I wanted to clean that up a little bit on the high end, and then I just ducked out whatever this bad frequency I was hearing was. And then I ended it off with some compression because the dynamics of the lead guitar can kind of be up and down, and I wanted to sound a little bit more full and fat in the mix and more upfront. So I compressed it a little bit to make it do that. Now on samples, I don't think I really did much on the samples. I ducked out a little bit of the low mids on this section because I think I remember it was clashing with the lo-fi guitar, if I remember correctly, or maybe it wasn't. I think it was clashing with the original guitar tone, so I wanted to kind of duck that out. I wanted my guitar tone to be more prominent and just have the original guitar more in the background, so I just ducked out some of those little mids. That was kind of making it sound muddy. Let's see what else I did. On the fill, nothing. Fetch Me Their Souls. Okay, so here's what I did on Fetch Me Their Souls. I did Howard Benson. This is basically just a vocal chain. And basically all I did was I used a little bit of compression on here. Because without it on, you don't really hear that that kind of like downlifter in the back. You compress it a little bit, you hear the downlifter a little bit, and then I wanted to add some more width, so it could fill out the stereo a little bit to make it sound more dramatic. And that's what I did on that. And then I did the same thing on the laugh. Just added some compression and added some width. And then the zombies piano, did I do anything on this? No, I didn't do much on that. And then the teddy bear laugh and everything. Of course, I added some compression to get that a little bit more prominent in the mix. And then I added some width, and that was basically it. So that's kind of, this is what it sounds like. Okay, and then all we have here is effects, and I don't think I did anything on the effects because it sounded good right out of the box. So that is the whole mix. Now I'm going to get into how I mastered this. All right, so for mastering, I always pull it into a separate session. The reason why I do that is because I want to commit to my mix. I don't want to start mastering and then start tweaking other things. Like when it's mixed, I want it to be mixed and it's done, and then I go into the mastering stage. So that's why I do that. And this is basically how I master pretty much everything that I work on and for clients. It's very, very simple. I use Optimus mastering system, and I actually got this for free because they reached out to me in my email and said, hey, do you want to use it, make videos on it? I said, okay, cool. So I'm not affiliated with them. I don't have an affiliate link or anything, but it was really nice of them to give me this. So I really appreciate that if you're watching, Optimus. But this is a very, very good mastering tool. Basically, it kind of uses AI to look at your frequency spectrum of your mix, and it basically balances it out in 3 different types of tones. So you'd have balanced, modern, and vintage. So on this mix, I wanted to sound a little bit more modern. So basically, I just used the AI to auto EQ everything for me. And I think that's really loud. Let me mute the other guitar. So basically when I'm mastering, the whole point of mastering is really to level out the EQ, making sure that it doesn't sound harsh or too pumpy and low endy in any areas. So you want to even out the EQ, and then you want to basically just make it loud as possible, because we're basically living in a world where your song has to be super loud to be able to compete. So what I do to make it loud is I use this plugin, and you don't even have to use this plugin. You can use a limiter. But what I want to do is I want to limit it to make it sure that the LUFs are hitting around -5, -4. If you go past -4, you're going to hear some problems coming in, like clipping and such. But basically, I wanted to dial in the overall LUFs of the sound to make it as loud as possible before problems started happening in the master. So I had to add an extra 14.5 dB to this, but I'm also, when I export the mix, the mix is very quiet. And the reason why I export the mix more quiet is because I want the headroom to be able to put it up to loudness. So for instance, if I exported my mix and it was like full loudness and it was really loud, and then I go into master, when you try to turn it up on the LUFs to be like -5-ish, you're going to start clipping like very, very fast. So what I want to do is that's another reason why I export my mix, is because I want it to be a lower volume so I can turn it up to volume without it starting to clip, right? So and really what I'm looking for is that momentary and also short term. If it's hovering around -5, the high -4s, that's the sweet spot that you want to be in. Then what I did is I used a little bit of this glue comp that came with the plugin. And then I noticed on my studio monitors and when I was listening in the car, it was just a little bit too much in the low end, especially from the kick. So I wanted to duck that out with this spectral dynamics. And then I just added a little bit of width just to make it sound more full and wide. And that's it. That is how I mix and mastered the Rooftops cover. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're interested in having me help you produce, mix, and master your music, you can go down in the description, and I have services available for heavy music artists that are looking to take their sound to the next level and make their stuff sound like this. So if you're interested, go down in the description below. There's also a bunch of free stuff like my Reaper templates and free mixing trainings and a plugin cheat sheet, so you know which plugins you need and which you don't, so you can save money. So I appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe. I'm closing in on 600 subscribers, so please subscribe. That would help me a lot, and I will see you in the next video.